So from citizenry inquiries, what's in addition to the secrecy trait known about the Freemasons is that a lot of them tend to be people who own businesses. What if you ask yourself what scenario allows for them to say that, a gay person is a person whose responsibility comes about from the rebellion against their own sexuality. Meanwhile, they constantly envision the perennial contests between God and Lucifer, and how that would instantly create grounds for the establishing of a bias and prejudice in what they consider to be the definitive description for an entire sexual demographic, would be something they would care about more, were it not that for the additional claim that these sorts of contests between these deities create the opportunity for them to think that they're filling in the gaps. And that's where I think that they think or feel entitled to be over assertive over authorities. They will think to use. I would submit that pedophilic in healthcare will be more concealed thanks to Freemasonry, less policed, and there'll be less arrests and convictions due to Freemasonry, and the fact that it truly is a horrid pretense of how dare you. There's often the so-and-so was my apprentice, they were my altar boy, I was teaching them to play the church organ for the 9 o'clock services. I only touched the left testicle. There's that sort of talk when you go after Cardinal Pell in a church, but Freemasonry being as so concealed, so they're enjoying what a tax-exempt status, having meeting points and gathering points where they could practice their religion. And they're not police there, they're not getting stormed there, and they're certainly not underground, because that's, if Lucifer's a patron saint, then would they not be underground relative to Christian churches? No. Actually, that would be a perfect guy's point, because all of the Christians are on ground, hoping that God doesn't send them under the ground. And their own theology would cloak them from Masonic gathering points in an instant. But yeah, I'm arguing that they'll produce worse pedophiles, Freemasonry, than Christian and Catholic peds. They'll be more concealed, and they'll have the muscle and leverage of their businesses as their defense when challenged. How could you even insinuate that a person two people who founded and sustained a conglomerate of private sector pharmacies for 40 years could ever be pedophilic? How dare you? And yeah, plus people with various health ailments would accommodate them to imagine more sex positions where they. So this glorification of Darwinism as morally prescriptive, as a model of morally prescriptive potentiality. It's not even what Darwin was talking about. It's not what he wanted. Darwin wanted to get along with the Christians, and his original releases of Origin of Species had letters printed and reprinted by a Christian saying, all my life I've wondered how God created man, and now, thanks to your work, I have some idea, etc., etc. The combination over time of things like his observation of suffering within the animal kingdom, the loss of his daughter, a convergence of a number of other factors led to him ultimately declaring himself an agnostic. But what's constant all along the way is that at no point was he saying survival of the fittest is now how you must behave. Find the weakest person and destroy them. Um, and in healthcare, you have a trust from people in the public saying that they're approaching various people in healthcare on a trust basis that in their weakened or depreciated state, the healthcare officiates will be respectful of them in their ailment, and will uphold a code which is, as far as doctors are concerned, it tends to tie back into the philosophy of Hippocrates, the father of medicine. Pharmacists are subordinate to doctors, but a lot of them are, and a lot of stuff doesn't occur to people who aren't on a religious crusade in their own mind. Like it genuinely doesn't interest them. I'm starting to become more. I'm becoming more and more anti-theist and more positively anti-theist as it goes, because I'm starting to see that if you've got a higher education that rules out your religion as being true, then the most you can do is make it into some sort of emotional hope. But then you're even mocking yourself insofar as you do that, because no valid case has been made for why you should believe in your own religion. So your only way to find any sort of fulfillment is to recreate it, or build a theme park to it here on Earth. And I can sort of see that that's what gets done in a lot of in these people thinking that their roundabout methods are worthwhile, and are meaningful, or are more detective than the police, or are pronouncing more accurate forms of judgment than the courts. Um, it's they'll avoid terms like usurpation because they genuinely do think that they're chosen for a higher calling. So that's why the scene with the woman, the mother that drowned her kids in the bathtub, is emotional, because you do sort of see some sincerity coming through there at the end, where she's sort of saying, well, um, you know, in her tears, even if God were to be telling me to do this, I'm starting to gather that I shouldn't have. And you can sense elements like that from it. Whereas the religious will go on making their errors in judgment because of their religion, um, while saying, if you challenge them, that you're violating the Religious Discrimination Act. I really wonder what it would do to things like the Mental Health Act if they made something as well. Like if they had the Human Rights Act, the Mental Health Act, and the Religious Peoples Act. And it's like, you have, if under the Religious Peoples Act, if you're in this religion, you have the right to strain your brain to find arguments to say that humanity began with Adam and Eve while no one inbred. Um, you have the right to fashion arguments to that end without being construed as giving away details about your own moments of solitude while leading up to and through your pubescent years. And they could call that the Religious Motherfuckers Act.